Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and we have amazing guests. I had some time to talk with them before we even started the podcast, and I'm very clear that I could talk with them for hours. And today we are going to be speaking with Justin Jones-Fosu. Justin is a husband, full-time daddy of two high-energy kids, four high-energy kids, and he also recently summited one of the seven summits, the tallest mountain on each continent. He is a highly sought after business speaker, social entrepreneur, and meaningful work researcher. He is the founder and CEO of Work Meaningful, where he speaks 50 to 60 times per year to companies, organizations, and associations in the US and internationally on meaningful work and diversity and inclusion. He is passionate about helping organizations and individuals take ownership of their mindset, purpose, and performance to achieve amazing results. He is the author of Your Why Matters Now, The Inclusive Mindset, and his latest book, I Respectfully Disagree: How to Have Difficult Conversations in a Divided World. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Woo! Kristen, I just want to say thank you for having me on. And I just have to say this to you is that all you need is love.
Yes.
All you need
I
is
wonder
love.
where you're getting that from. It's so true, right? All you need.
Yeah.
So great to have you here today on the show. Justin, there's so many different places that I want to go with you, but as a starting point, I always like to give my audience an opportunity to learn more about you and your story
Yeah.
and your journey, and you can start it wherever you want.
Yeah. It's funny when you were saying all the places you want to go, I immediately thought of Dr. Seuss. So I was like, oh, hey, all the places you will go. But I love long walks on the beach, and I'm joking, even though I do. But I think my story begins with my mom. And, I know you as a mom, I hope you can appreciate this. And, my mom, like we were growing up, Kristen, we didn't have a lot. I mean, we had a stint of being unhoused, we were on welfare, all the things. My mom would shop at, Salvation Army before it became cool. And I swear she would get like little sweater vests and bow ties because I swear she was trying to create boys to men group. But the interesting thing throughout all of that is that my mom would take my brother and I to events, and single mom, um, that were different than us, right? And so we went to Oktoberfest and Polish festivals and Hispanic Heritage Month events and First Peoples powwows. And we also brought difference into our home. And so we had exchange students from France and Japan and Brazil, and even two from Germany that stayed with us each for 1 year. And I also remember my mom, she would take us to events that we disagreed with. And I'd be sitting there like in the event, like, why are we here? We don't even agree with this. What I didn't realize my mom was doing, Kristen, was that she was planting these seeds of humanity that's right before us. And as I interviewed my mom for my last two books, because I thought I was smart,
Yeah.
and I realized I just got this from my mom. And as I interviewed her, one of the things she shared with me is a story I'll share with you in the audience, and that's simply that my mom shared that she was one of the first black female air traffic controllers in the Air Force, and that there were sometimes when she would be stationed in Japan for 2 years, and there were some soldiers in that same 2 year time frame that never left base.
Mm.
And she was like, Justin, I never wanted you and your brother to ever be like that you would never leave your quote unquote home base and not get to experience the beauty of people and cultures around you. So a lot of who I am today came from this single mom who worked her butt off to provide an environment for us, even in challenging moments, that we would see the humanity of others, that we would appreciate and embrace difference, and that we would, even in places where we disagreed, still choose to respect others.
Wow, amazing. And I was gonna like immediately I wanted to go from a place of curiosity. How did she have the foresight to think about? And that makes so much sense because she had through her experience and seeing when people didn't have that kind of exposure. And so when you start to go from that, what did your career journey look like? Did you say like, okay, I want to definitely, once I'm done school, I want to be able to be in a role where I'm helping other people be able to understand about this? Or did you zig and zag as well before you got to the work you're currently doing?
Yeah, I kind of zig and zag, but I think all of it were building blocks to where I am today. Initially coming out, it's going to sound weird. I went into marketing, and part of the reason I went into marketing is because I saw a movie, one of my favorite movies called Boomerang.
Yeah.
And Boomerang had Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, Halle Berry, Katie Smith. A lot of different people, right? Alan Greer. And it was one of the first times I saw a movie that had black people in it that were professionals.
Mm,
And it wasn't like hardcore comedy. They weren't gangsters. They weren't in gang. They were professionals who ran companies, who led marketing departments, who were doing really good work. And Eddie Murphy dressed up all the time in this movie, and I'm just like, I remember I'm in high school, and I'm like, I want to be like this. And so I started dressing up and wearing suits to school, and I
wow.
was like, I'm going to be in marketing. And so I majored in marketing, and it gave me a lot of good opportunities to experience. And so I interned with they're not really known companies, Coca-Cola and Pfizer,
Never
and
heard of them.
so, never heard of Coca-Cola. But these experiences helped shape me because even at Pfizer, I was exposed to like the training program. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's something about this training thing that is just captivating me. And then I went to work for this little known French store named Target. And while at Target, for those who didn't get that joke, the interesting thing is that I was exposed to the team training program, and then I began to lead it at our store as one of the store managers. And I just fell in love with it. And I remember, as a police store manager, reaching out to the head of organizational development at Target in Minneapolis and having an informational interview. I was like, I want to be you.
Yes.
I want to be the head of OD for, a Fortune 50 company. And so I had the conversations, and person helped me to think through what it looked like. And so I got an opportunity to work for a top financial firm in corporate training and development. And I shifted completely because I was on this kind of leadership track. And I was like, let me go. And I started over kind of like in the career journey. And then I was part of global HR, I was in corporate training and development, then went on to work for university to be the program manager at GW for their master's program in human resource development. And
Mm-hmm.
by that time, I'd already started the business because I was just really passionate about it, and I was doing it on my own time. And so I got to a point where probably 2.5, close to 3 years in of working at GW, I had made more by May than my full-time salary in my business. And so I decided a strategic time was to leave so I could have more impact in the work that I did. So that was really the high level trajectory of how I came to doing this work, and it's kind of morphed over time
Yeah.
as we really leaned into like what are my passion points, what are the things that inspire me, and it
Mm-hmm.
was creating a better employee experience
Mm-hmm.
for not only for organizations but for the actual employees that they were able to bring their full selves to work as well as home.
Yeah.
And so just researching ways, practical research-based ways to do that, and ways to actually simplify really complex topics. And so that's what we do at Work Meaningful.
I think that's so great. And I deliberately wanted you to share how you got there because I think so many people zig and zag. And then people think that, well, I can't do that because I'm at this stage in my career. And
Mhm.
it's like, no, no, no.
Yeah,
I know 70-year-olds who have gone in a completely different career trajectory and a different direction than where they were. And I think people just listening and paying attention, what are those things that really energize them and they just get up in the morning and feel so excited. And I can hear
yeah.
you were in that environment and you were hearing it, it was pulling you in. So cool. So,
Thank you.
so tell me more. First, I want to around the TEDx. Like when you're going to do a TEDx, I always feel like that's like you're birthing something, right? So there was a desire for you to birth that in the world. Tell me why it felt so important for you to be able to birth that talk. And I'm going to have this in the show notes, but for people who haven't heard the talk, tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more around the talk and how it's probably connected to some of your books as well.
Yeah. So the TEDx was called Don't Take the Exit on People. And really, I started noticing something in society is that we were taking exits on people. And what I mean by that, let me kind of give the scenario of, imagine Monday through Friday, you take this exit every single day, and then one day you're supposed to go straight. But what do? You take the exit. And so as I started diving into the concepts of inclusion, respectful disagreement, and all these pieces, it wasn't that people were mean-spirited. Most people weren't mean-spirited or wanted the wrong things. It's that they just ended up taking the exit on people. So they went based on second and third hand information because that's the way our brains work. Our brains are actually working against us in the sense of imagine, your brain went on autopilot at that moment. So imagine you find out information about people, second and third hand information, right? Through osmosis, somebody shares something. And so you now encounter that. What our brains want to do is it wants to conserve energy for things it thinks it doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ends up pulling what it is just categorized, it pulls it in. And so if you keep on hearing about these people who are wearing these red shirts and they keep on smacking people against the head, you see a person with a red shirt and you're suspicious, like, "Hey, they better not smack me against my head," because it's the ways our brains work. And what we're doing is we're taking the exit. And guess what? So was I. I was taking the exit on people. And so I wanted to help myself, but then also help others to
Mm-hmm.
begin not taking the exit on people and actually drive forward towards some really amazing humans. And that is one of the ways that I leave home base now
Mm-hmm.
is we can stay in home base and easily take the exit and have perspectives and thoughts, and we think that we see the world objectively. And I love, this whole concept, the psychological terms for all this naive realism and all these kind of things, is that we don't see the world as it is, which we often think we do. We see the world as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't realize that we're filtering and thinking through our own lenses. And so the only way to not take the exit is to be curious,
Yes.
to choose to hear people's stories,
Yeah.
to get closer to people, proximity, to put ourselves in positions of understanding in ways that we can challenge our perspective. It doesn't always mean we're going to change our perspective, but we should challenge it because that helps us to better understand how we got there. And so, in doing this TEDx, it was one of my ways of deepening the level of impact that we can do beyond a presentation I can give, or at that point, the book, The Inclusive Mindset, had come out. And it was just a different way to help people to really lean into others in ways that are helpful and humanity giving.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's such an important discussion. And I am a big, big fan of the word curiosity, right? I think so many times if we could just tune into curiosity, curious about others, but also curious about
Yeah.
ourselves, right? Just like, oh, that's
Yes.
curious. Like, what's going on there? It's interesting the way I've gotten so riled up in that moment.
Yeah.
What's here for me? What's the learning? We were talking before we started the podcast around parenting, and I love there's someone named Dr. Shafali, and she talks about conscious parenting. And I love when she said, "Oh, your kids are here to be your teachers. They are here for you to do your
Right.
work, right? Like every time you get upset and want them to change, take a step over and look over at you and tune into what are they here to teach you? Why are they having this
Yeah.
impact on you?" So I love curiosity. I really try to
Good.
embrace it, but not just with others, but also for ourselves. Because I think if we get curious, there's so many ways that we could be holding ourselves back, whether that's from having a really powerful dialogue with another person, but even holding ourselves back from ways that we could be having impact and doing really important things in the world.
I love what you said here, and I think that's so profound. And here's where I find, not only in our sessions and our consulting work, that people get stuck, is because they hear curiosity. And most people aren't going to say, "Oh, I should never be curious," right? I think most people want to be curious. They want to lean into this thing, but start asking our research is what stops people, right? What are the things that hinder people from being more curious, from leaning in? And I realized that some of that is the one, our mindset, and the other piece is the strategy with which we choose to employ. So let me address two pretty quickly. I love Carol Dweck's work on mindset, and for your listeners, that if you haven't checked out her book Mindset, please read it
So good.
immediately. I know
Yeah.
that you all have talked about that often in this
Yeah.
in this podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But just these growth versus fixed-based mindsets, and I realized I was operating from really this fixed-based mindset that I was comparing myself to others, that if I was a failure, if I was ignorant in something, that meant I was stupid, I was dumb, I didn't know anything, and that failure was final. Rather than this growth-based mindset is that my only competition is myself.
Mm.
that failure is just another data point for learning. And if I don't know something, I just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And so I started asking from a mindset shift. I was like, if I have this mindset, what are the strategies in my life that need to be true in order for me to enact this or live this out? And so I want to give people three practical ways to lean into being more curious.
Yes.
Number one is I do a thing called a birthday challenge.
Mm.
And I implemented the birthday challenge because it's really as simply as this. It's one thing every year, and I do it around my birthday.
Yeah.
And so what's one thing every year that I want to do something I've never have done,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that I want to learn and grow because I want to continue to grow and expand because I don't want to confine myself to what I already know. And so one of my first ones was skiing, right? And I'd never gone skiing. Went skiing in Vail, Colorado, in a very unpopular place. And I'm struggling as a 30-year-old because I see these kids that are 8 or 9 years old who are killing the slopes, and I am falling over,
Yeah.
right? But and I want to give up. Just truthfully, I'm like, this is probably my last time skiing. I feel embarrassed. I shouldn't be here. But I
Yes.
decided to keep going back,
Yeah.
right? And now I'm on the intermediate slopes. I only fall 4 times, but I bring my kids who became those kids who are 8 or 9 years old who are slashing down the skis. So that's number one. Consider a birthday challenge. Number two, consider challenging your perspective, what we call the Circles of Grace Challenge, where every 6 to 12 months I go to events, experiences, or I engage with people, in either which I don't know a lot about
Nice.
or I disagree with.
Yes.
And what that's done is that started me on the journey of understanding and of learning of others. But I had to put that as a strategy in my life because if you left it up to what I felt like doing,
Yeah.
it normally would be confining myself to my circles of comfort. And
Yeah.
so the Circles of Grace Challenge is one additional way. And lastly,
Interesting.
as you're encountering people,
Mm-hmm.
especially those you disagree with, and even those you do agree with,
Mm.
is deep listening. And so
Mm-hmm.
even in the TEDx, we talked about the power of three as a tool to
Mm-hmm.
listen in terms of how do we listen to the third level of the conversation. And so asking another question and asking, tell me more about that. And so I sometimes, even with my kids, I go into it because I'm like, okay, I know I want to operate in the teacher mode, but I'm like, okay, what can I learn from them? And I say to myself, Justin, don't give any advice, don't give any thoughts until you've asked at least three questions. And
Mm.
even if the question or the statement is, tell me more because I don't know what else to ask, that allows me to dive deeper into understanding and give myself permission to be fully present
Mm.
because I'm trying to figure out a question based upon what they've said. And that those are ways that we can, build the not only the mindset but the strategies to help us to be more curious.
So good. I think the tell me more is so valuable in a workplace and outside of work too. And especially if it's something what's coming up to mind in this moment is sometimes the things that my son is watching on YouTube. I'm like, really? But I'll come from curiosity. I'll say, help me understand more. Why
Yeah,
do you gravitate to this person? And what is
yeah,
it you're getting out of the videos? And what does it bring you? And it's so interesting when I do that.
yeah,
I learned so much more about his world and why he's gravitating towards that. And then he
yeah,
feels so happy and excited that I'm taking an
yeah.
interest and that he gets to share more about something that he's passionate about. Uh,
That's so good.
right, right. It's just so, and you can see even the look on his face
Yeah,
think is just glowing because he's so happy that I'm taking an interest and wanting to really enter his world and understand more and all of that stuff. And how often does that happen in workplaces as well, where when you're
yeah,
saying, tell me more, that human, I mean, I'm just thinking of as we're talking about this too, I did a training with an executive team in December, and I had an exercise where they had to be bringing a photo and share more about their journey. And these are
yeah,
people who had worked together for many years, and this is the first time they were
yeah,
hearing this story and this level of connection and humanity that happened. I'm
yeah,
getting goosebumps, so I know I'm onto something.
yeah,
The level of humanity in that moment, I just thought like we all want that. Like we all crave
yeah.
for this. It's just I think we sometimes get lost along the way.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me a little bit more around, I can't remember where I saw a video that you did, and I really like this. When you were talking about meaningful work, I think it was
Yeah,
something around it's not about making work more meaningful. It's about giving work more meaning, something along those lines. Like,
Yeah.
tell me more about meaningful work and what that
Yes.
means to you.
Yeah. So you're close, or I
Yeah.
give you credit for being close. What my teacher used to say, you get a
Yeah,
C for
yeah,
being
yeah,
close.
yeah. I'm on the way.
Uh,
I'm on the way.
like, oh, I failed. Um, but we started diving into this concept of meaningful work. We started paying attention to trends, right? And HR, the former HR professional, like one of the trends was around, for millennials, meaningful work was a top 10 thing. For Gen Z, it became a top 3 thing. And so we started saying, what are we talking about when we talk about meaningful work?
Right.
Does it means we're working for organizations that are saving the earth? Or is there another way to approach this? Because there's only those limiting moments of places that do stuff like that, right? Not every company can be that. And so we started noticing even companies try to almost fake the consumer out
Right,
of
right.
like, hey, if you buy 10 of this, we're going to give 0.5% to this organization. And it really was to try to pull that altruistic nature out of people.
Yeah.
And so we said, well, what if we were thinking about this differently? And so we started digging into the research. And then Rizanowski and Dutton in 2001, they really had this seminal work, research around job crafting.
Mm,
And so we started really paying attention to this research, and we repurposed kind of the research in a way from packaging. We called it the three rhythm model. And so I'm a dual citizen of both Ghana and United States, and the djembe
hmm
drum is important to us. And so
mm,
sometimes in my presentations, I'll bring up somebody to drum with me, and I'll say something like, "All right, Kristen, I want you just to drum,"
yeah.
and you'll drum. And I'm like, "Now I want you to drum like you're drumming for someone you passionately love, right?" And I'm like, now I want you to drum like you're the best part of your life. And now drum like danger's coming. You have to warn us. Now, inevitably, the drum beats change, but the
hmm
drum has stayed the same.
hmm
And it's not about the drum, it's
mm,
about the meaning we put into the drum.
mm.
And
Yeah.
that really became the statement is that we are the drum. And the question is, what is the meaning we're putting into the work that we do and engage and how we do it? Our work is a drum and it's a meaning we put into it. And so instead of trying to find meaning, the
Yeah.
research bears out that we can bring meaning to our work. And so we
Yeah.
share that three rhythm model is we can do that with the perspective rhythm. It's
hmm
how we choose to see things. We can do that with the task rhythm. It's what we choose to do. And we can do that with the relationship rhythm. It's who we choose to engage. And the key word in all those is choose.
Yes.
That
Choice.
this is a choice
hmm
and it's only based upon what you and I can control.
hmm
And I want to ask you, like Krista, who's the only person that you and I can control?
Ourselves.
Yes, our kids. And so the interesting thing is that no, I'm just I tried to control my kids, it didn't work. Uh, but like we are the only people that we can control.
hmm
But I found myself and so many other people that we work with trying to control things that are uncontrollable to themselves. And so that's one way that we lean into what we call work meaningful.
Yes, beautifully, beautifully articulated. I think that that is something that shows up so often where reminding people that we're at choice and then
Yeah.
realizing what can you and can't you control. And there was a beautiful, I think it was maybe in one of your speaker reels, a video of you talking to a janitor and him
Yeah.
saying, what it meant for him to go into work. And even just, I see his energy and his excitement, even in the video. It was just beautiful. But I think it's, again, a reminder in terms of being empowered. You could have,
Yeah.
many people in the same workplace, and one person leaves and like, that was an awesome day. I did this, this, and this. And then someone else is like, that was miserable. That was the worst day ever.
Right.
And I'm not, of course, there's going to be ups and downs and ebbs and flows. And you might just have
Yes.
a yes. But the mindset and the perspective shift can be huge. Can you share a little bit more
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. So we love, and I'm glad you brought up that work and meaningful moments because we started trying to capture people doing things right,
Yeah.
people that were bringing meaning to their work.
Yeah.
And it's really about how we choose to see things. I'll give myself as an example, right? Um, I used to hate the TSA line.
Right.
As a person who travels 50 to 60 times a year,
Yes.
I'm like, oh, gotta go through this again. Oh my gosh, this is,
Yeah.
so, and I remember one day, so I was a normal passenger, right? Rumbling in line, can't we go in this? Impatient, frustrated with the TSA officer who's checking us in, wanting them to hurry us along. If I get dinged or checked, I'm like, oh, of course, it's rigged. Of course you're gonna check me. So I was that passenger.
Yes.
And one day I'm standing in line, Kristen, and I noticed this woman doing something in line that you should never do.
Right.
She was smiling,
Right.
right? And she was talking to the TSA agents. And I wanted to go tap her on the shoulder, like, excuse me, ma'am,
So
we don't
sweet.
do that here. This is TSA, right? But
Yes.
instead, as I began to observe her, what do you think began to happen around her, Kristen?
Mm. Everybody else's energy shifted. Yes.
The ripple effect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so as she began to engage, I started noticing other people engage around her. I started noticing the hardened TSA agent that normally doesn't smile would crack a smile. And I was so inspired by her that I was like, oh my gosh, the next time I show up, I'm gonna be like her. So
Yes.
the very next time I showed up and I was like dancing, right? I was
Yeah.
like, da da da.
Yeah.
Now it got me a couple extra searches, but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story was that my new mission became I wonder how many of the agents could I make smile?
Yes.
That became my new
Yes.
mission. So
Yes.
something that I still don't enjoy. I tell people honestly, I don't enjoy traveling, right? I enjoy arriving places,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the travel process is not something I enjoy, but I gamified it for myself to see how many I can make smile. And I say something now, as I began to gamify it, I stumbled upon a phrase that I had no idea would have a profound impact on them, but even on me.
Mm.
It's this simple phrase in going through the TSA line.
Mm.
Thank you so much for helping to keep us safe today.
Mm.
And
Mm.
Kristen, you would have no idea how many TSA agents say back to me, thank you. We never hear that.
Mm.
It doesn't take me 6, 7 seconds to say. But in that moment, somebody felt true worth, true value, and like their work mattered. What if we leaned into that in our workplaces as senior level executives or C-suite or HR directors, CFOs, whatever we are, mid-level managers, and just the people that normally aren't appreciated or valued because we normally spend so much time trying to impress the senior ups because we're trying to get a promotion and all this kind of stuff. But what if we spend as much time trying to impress those
Mm.
who may not make as much as us, may not have our title, may
Mm.
not have as much of the prestige as society normally gives,
Mhm.
and let them know that their work matters and is valued?
Mm.
Those are the moments that I think we have an opportunity to shift and change. And so, did the TSA line change, Kristen? No. Even when I got pre-check, there's some places I still go, yes, I have clear as well.
Yeah.
But it's still what changed was my approach to it. And that's the concept of how we bring meaning to our work. And we as leaders, we have a profound impact to help those that we lead to do the same.
I love that story. First of all, I'm going to take that to heart and remember to say that when I'm in the TSA lines because, and it reminds me of a story where when I used to go a commute into the city, I would be on a train and it'd be early in the morning and everyone would look very miserable on the train. And I said, I'm going
Mhm.
to make it my goal that I'm going to smile, I'm going to make eye
Yeah,
contact, I'm going to say hello to everyone I see in that train. And it was exactly
yeah,
like you said, the one person I'd seen smiled and the next person over they would see, and then all of a sudden this dialogue, and I ended making so many wonderful friends on that train. But it was so interesting around, and then even when I'm downtown Toronto, and downtown Toronto when it's a cold and
yeah,
everybody's running around, they've got somewhere to go. But to the point where I didn't even realize that this now is built in, that I'm always doing the smile. Then people would smile back at me. I'm like, oh, what just, oh, I'm smiling. I didn't even realize I was doing it. But it's so interesting.
yeah,
It's like, and I think it's so good for everyone to listen, of course, in our workplaces, but all this work, I believe it's not just work, it's everywhere. Our communities, our families,
yeah,
strangers. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have
yeah,
to be complicated at all.
yeah.
Yeah,
And Joseph was the gentleman's name.
yeah,
That was the custodial staff member at the Charlotte airport that I captured doing um, amazing work. I mean, it's
yeah,
his story. I mean, I'll briefly tell her. It's like I ran into him because he was smiling and singing. He was doing what you were doing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I saw him picking up trash. I'm like, he's smiling and singing to himself and he's picking up trash. I was like, I need to go
Yeah.
like thank him,
Yeah.
right? So I went over and to thank him, and instead of me feeling like I imparted something to him, he imparted something to me. And as like, thank you so much for your work. It's meaningful. You made my experience better. Joe was like, oh, this is great. It's like, I love what I do. He was like, I do it to the best of my ability because I love my job and I thank the Lord for it. And he's like, I want to make the airport a better place. And he's like, do you know that there's more trash in the Pacific Ocean the size of the state of Texas? And I'm sitting there like, this is a guy picking up. I'm like, how do you know this? Like, and so
Mm.
I'm like, I'm capturing this in video, right? Very raw, authentic form. But I didn't even have my phone faced the right way, in terms of like, how it's supposed to be like the landscape. And I was just like capturing it. I was like, and I realized that he approached his work differently because he saw a greater purpose in it. And how can we as leaders help our people to see the greater purpose? I mean, I literally just had this conversation with my team today. We had our monthly family meeting with my team. And, in each of the monthly family meetings, I go through one tip that I share with audiences that I want to make sure my team also gets. And so we were walking through that.
Yeah.
And I continue to share with them the impact that they have. And I continue to share with them. I was like, when I get testimonials or people share how the impact has had, I send it to them. I was like, look what we've done,
Yeah.
right? Because it's
Yeah.
just in the end user that's impacting people. It's the whole process.
You got
And
it.
so helping people to see the value of what they do really matters. Now, I ran into Joseph a year later
Mm.
and, we dapped each other up, greeted each other. And, he's like, Justin, thank you. I'm like, for what?
Mm.
He's like, I ended up receiving the highest award you can receive in the company. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome, Joseph. But why are you thanking me? And Kristen, I forgot the video that you saw built in. I took and I plastered on all my social media. And I put the name, number, and email address of the CEO of the company and the HR director. Sorry, CEOs and HRs, right? And I told my community, if you were inspired by this,
Yes.
let them know. And
Yes.
so people called in on behalf of Joseph and emailed in, and he ended up receiving that recognition and I had to remind Joseph, not of what we did, but it's all about how he chose to show up. That is the power of bringing meaning to our work.
Mm. And I'd say the other thing, which is an added bonus, is the power of community. Like, look what you did there in terms of creating community, because sure, you then took the video and then look at all of these beautiful souls that don't know him, but say, I want to go and acknowledge. Again,
Yeah,
beauty of community and everyone coming together, which they did through you sharing
yeah,
that. Oh,
yeah. Community is dope.
oh, so good, so good. So when you think about and you started to speak about this in terms of how leaders can help people be thinking more about this in terms of the meaning and purpose, I always
Yeah.
like to give my guests a magic wand. So I'm giving you the magic
Mm.
wands, and then you get to go into the workplace and say, okay, if I could use the magic wand and do a couple of things with the magic wand, what would you want to do? How would you help organizations to really focus on?
Yeah, so I think right now in our society, and it's just as big, it's probably based on the book that I just wrote, is helping organizations create spaces where people can respectfully disagree. And I continue to see. I mean, that's why I wrote the book. I never plan on writing this book, Kristen. It was never like, oh, this is my 5 year strategic plan. I'm going to write this. No, I just kept on hearing what my audience were asking for. They were saying they were scared to say the wrong thing. They
Mm-hmm.
were saying that they didn't want to be labeled. They were saying they didn't want to be canceled. They were saying, I have a good heart, but I'm afraid I'm going to come across the wrong way and all these things. And then there's some people on the other side is, I don't care what people think. I'm going to say whatever I want to say, and they just got to take it because I'm going to be me. I'm going to do me, boo, like all
Right,
these things. And I was
right.
like, there has to be a better way. And so, what I feel like leaders that we can start to help create these cultures of more respectful disagreement by doing three things.
Yeah,
Number one, in our teams and in our meetings, to first model the behavior.
yeah.
And in modeling the behavior, one of the things we should do is ask for people to disagree with us.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we underestimate that simple thing. I tell my team, right? I want you to disagree with me because we will come up with better solutions together. And during my MBA, one of my favorite books that I was changed and by but challenged to read was a book called Dialogue: The
Mm-hmm.
Art of Thinking Together. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a profound book by William Isaacs that really shaped who I am. So that's number one, modeling behavior, asking for disagreement. Number two is rewarding that disagreement. And what I mean by rewarding, I don't mean monetary or compensation,
Yeah.
but if it happens, Kristen, thank you for disagreeing with me.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good point because it actually made me think about X. In that moment, the people who are watching around you, who are listening in, they're paying attention to what you're saying matters to you. And once you've done that, other people are like, oh, so that's what this person wants.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. And then you start to create that environment where people are able to come back. And last but not least, because this is the thing we forget, and I love ADKAR as a change management model, is that we forget that reinforcement.
Mm.
So now, if I've come up with a different thought, if I've implemented it, or it's achieved a goal, or if it's made an impact 2 or 3 months later, to come back to that meeting, Kristen, remember when we disagreed on that one time, and you brought up that, yeah, it's morphed into a whole different idea. But I want to say thank you because it's actually led to this $3 million initiative, or we actually won the client because of something that you challenged us with to think about and to go in.
Yeah.
Those are those moments that begin to actually shape the culture, not feedback boxes that most people don't even pay attention to or respond back to,
Yeah.
not surveys that people feel like I've had the conversation with people. They're like, they don't even do anything with the surveys. They want to do it, just to say you did a survey.
Yeah.
But those specific moments are ways that we as leaders, that's my magic wand, that we
Yeah.
create spaces people can do that.
I think that's so important what you said. And I love that you gave really specific tools for someone who's listening that's saying, okay, I'm a leader. I want to create an environment where more of this is happening. How
Yeah.
can you be part of that? And then through them modeling it, thinking the leaders all the way down, then they've got their leaders doing that, and then creating an environment where now ultimately I would say what we need to have in this space is a lot of trust and psychological safety as well in
Yeah.
order for people to go there.
Yeah. And that's the way to build it,
Yeah.
right? Is that trust. It's not when somebody, somebody brings up something and you immediately shut them down, right? Because now I say, oh, they actually don't want to hear it. They went to a workshop where they told them to ask for people's perspective. But
Right.
when I share my perspective, it's immediately shut
We don't
down. It's
actually
totally,
want it. That was a
yeah.
pretend. We didn't actually want to hear
Right.
what you had to
I
say.
just wanted to say it
Yeah.
because the facilitator told me I should
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
perspective matters. Well, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a stupid idea. Why would you think that? Rather than, you know what? Thank you for sharing that.
Mm.
We're gonna muddle over that and we'll come back to the next meeting. Or if you don't have time, because we as leaders, we don't always have time. We have to make quick decisions. Things are changing rapidly.
Mhm.
Rapidly. I love this body of work on respectful disagreement. It's a thing called conversation receptiveness. Really awesome. There's 4 recipes. We're not gonna go through the 4 recipes, but one of those is simply acknowledging the person.
Mhm.
Simple acknowledgement, right? That's one of the, even with people you completely disagree with, simple acknowledgement, right? Jean Zhao, Stanford professor, came up with this concept called thank you because.
Yeah.
That if I disagreed with you, Kristen, on something that, Kristen, thank you because, I've never heard it shared that way before. Or simply, Kristen, thank you because, wow, number three things you mentioned, number two really stood out. I want to dive in deeper. Or simply, this is a really tough conversation for us to have. And Kristen, I really want to thank you because you didn't have to have it. But that full acknowledgement means something to people. But we often conflate full acknowledgement with full agreement. And that's one practical way that we can lean in by in each of those conversations, even that one that you're not going to be able to implement. You know
Yeah.
what? Thank you for bringing that idea. That's actually a really good idea. While we may not be able to implement it now, but I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Just that acknowledgement means something.
Yeah. It reminds me back in the day too. I remember we talked about this through improv. You never say but, it's yes and, so that you're playing off of it so that it doesn't feel like that person is shut down. It's like yes and when you keep on with that yes and energy, the ideation of where it ends up going can be incredibly powerful. So even if it was that person shared, that doesn't happen, that might get you to another iteration that you would have never gone to that iteration if that person hadn't have shared their perspective or a different way of looking at it.
The brilliance that you possess is on par, Kristen, because that's where, I mean, literally, that's where she got the model from of thank you because
Yeah.
it was improv. And so she talks about it. She was like, because most people use no because. Not thank you because. No, because that's stupid. No, because we tried that the last 2 years, it didn't work.
Yeah.
No, because why would anybody think that?
Yeah.
Rather than thank you because. So you're dead on spot. You're spot
Yeah.
on.
And if you did that on a stage in improv, the show's over, right? Because if you're
Right.
like, no, I don't want to go there, it's like, forget it. This is a dumb idea. It's like, okay, then how are we going to play off and make this performance happen? We're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, so beautiful. I mean, there's so many different things we could talk about, but what I want to do is I want to really tell everyone listening, you should check out the books. I will have all of the books in the show notes, the TEDx talk as well, which was phenomenal. Justin, where else can people go to learn more about you and the wonderful work you're doing in the world?
Yeah, three places. One, our overarching umbrella, workmeaningful.com. That's where they can see how we're working to improve meaningful employee experience in the workplace and in people's lives. Number two, specifically on how to respectfully disagree. That dives into the book, I Respectfully Disagree, about having these difficult conversations. And last but not least, I love LinkedIn. And so I'm Justin Jones-Fosu on LinkedIn. And so I love engaging with people there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for having me, and thank you for inspiring leaders.
Uh,
That's awesome.
I loved our conversation, and I hope people really take it to heart. And just want to let everybody know who is listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with others. And thanks so much for your reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you like to develop more confident and emotionally intelligent leaders in your organization, let's connect. And I can share more about my one-on-one coaching, transformational keynotes, and ongoing leadership training. Wherever you are listening in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, sending tons of love. Bye bye.